sambuddho sakato ena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savaka sangho tamayang bhagavantang sadhammang sasanghang imehi sakkare yatharhan aropitehi avibhujyama sadhuno bhante bhagava sucira parinibhutopi pachima janatanukampanasa ime sakkare dugata panakara bhute patiganatu amhakam digarata hitaya sukhaya arham samma sambuddho bhagava buddhang bhagavantang abhivademi swakhato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namassami supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho sanghang namami.
Handmayam buddhasya bhagavato pubbabhag namakaram karomasi namo
tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Handmayam buddhanusatinayam karomasi tam ko
Pana bhagavantang evang kalyano kiti saddho abhugato iti piso bhagava arhan samma sambuddho vijjacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati satta deva manussana buddho bhagavati.
Handmayam buddhabhigitim karomasi buddham
Arahanta varata diguna-bhiyuto yoddha-bhiñāna karuna isamagatato bodhesiyo sujanatam kamalang vasuro vandamiham tamarana sirasa jinendam buddho yo sabbapaninam saranam khema uttamang patammanusatiṭṭhāna bandhami tam sirenam buddhasasmi daso buddho me sami kesaro buddhasaham niyādemi sariran jivitan chidang vandantoham charisami buddhaseva subodhitang nati me saranang anyak buddho me saranang varang etena sajja vajjena वड्डेयं सत्तु शासने
बुद्धं मे
वन्दमानेन यं पुण्यं प्रसुतम् इदा सर्वेऽपि अन्तरायामि मायेषु तस्य तेजसा कायेन वाचा वचेत्सवदम्मिकं पकटमय बन्धो पटिगनाथ वचन कालान्तरे संवरितुम बुद्धे
धम्मानुसति हन्दमयं धम्मानुसतिनयं करोमसि
कातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिट्ठिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको ओपनयिको पच्चत्तं वेरितव्यो विඤ्ඤोहीति
आनन्दमयं धम्माभिगीतिं करोमसि
स्वाकाततादिगुण उगवसेन सेयो यो मग्गपाकपर्यति विमोकभेदो तिमोकुलोकपटना तदधारि वन्दाम्यहं तमरं धम्ममेतं यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं
किममुत्तमं द्वितीयानुसतिष्ठानं
वन्दामि तं शिरेणाहं धम्मस्सस्मि दासोऽहं धम्मो मे सामिकेश्वरो धम्मस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तोऽहं चरिष्यामि धम्मस्यैव सुधम्मतं नास्ति मे शरणं अन्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरं एतेन सच्चवज्जेन वड्डेयं सत्तु शासने धम्मं मे वन्दमानेन यं पुण्यं प्रसुतम् इदा सर्वेऽपि अन्तरायामि मायेषु तस्य तेजसा कायेन वाचा वचसा धम्मेकं पकटमय धम्मो पटिगनाथ वचन कालान्तरे संवरितुम धम्मे
आनन्दमयं सङ्घानुसतिनयं करोमसि
सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अष्टपुरुषपुङ्गला एष भगवतो सावक संगो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यकेतं लोकसाधि
आनन्दमयं सङ्गाभिगीतिं करोमसि सधम्मजो
सुपटिपत्तिगुणादियुतो यो अष्टविधो पुङ्गलसङ्गसेठो शीलादिधम्मपवरा सयकाय चित्तो वन्दाम्यहं तं यानगणं सुशुद्धं सङ्गो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं ततयानुसतिष्ठान वन्दामि तं शिरेणम् सङ्गस्सस्मि दासो वा सङ्गो मे सामिकीश्वरो सङ्गस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तोऽहं चरिष्यामि सङ्गस्सुपटिपन्तं नास्ति मे शरणं अन्यः सङ्गो मे शरणं वरं एतेन
सज्जवज्जेन
वड्डेयं सत्तु शासने सङ्गं मे वन्दमानेन यं पुण्यं पशुतं हृदय सब्बेऽपि अन्तरायामि मायेषु तस्य तेजसा कायेन वाचा धम्मेन संगे कुकम्मं पकटमय संगोपटिगनात्वचेन् कालान्तरे संवरितम् असंगे। अब हम जय मंगल अट्ठगाथा का पाठ करेंगे।
बाहुं सहस्रमभिनिन्दित सायुधन्तं गिरिमेखलमुदित घोरससेनमारं दानादिदं विधिना जितवामुनीन्दो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि मारातिरेकमभियुज्यित सब्बरतिं घोरं पनालवकमख मतद्धयखम् हन्ति सुदन्त विधिना जितवामुनिन्दो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि। नालागिरिगजवरम् अतिमत्तभूतं दावर्गिचक्रमसनीव सुदारुणन्तं मेत्तम्बुसेक विधिना जितवामुनीन्दो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि। उक्खिप्तखड्गमतिहत्थ सुदारुणन्तं धावन्ति योजनपथङ्गुलिमालवन्तं सिद्धिविसङ्खत मनोजितवामुनीन्दो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि। कट्वानुकट्ठमुदरम् इव गभ्भिनीया चिञ्चाय दुःखवचनं जनकाय मज्जे सन्तेन सोमविधिना जितवा मुनीन्द्रो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि सत्यं विहाय मतिसज्जकवादकेतम् वादाभिरोपितमनम् अति अन्धभूतम् पञ्ज्ञापदीप जलितोर्जितवा मुनीन्द्रो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि नन्दोपनन्दभुजगम् विभुदं महीष्यम् उत्तेन थेरभुजगेन समापयन्तो इद्धूपदेश विधिना जितवा मुनीन्द्रो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि दुग्गाहदिद्धि भुजगेन सुदट्ठहत्थम् ब्रह्मं विशुद्धि ज्युतिमेद्धि बकाभिधानम् याणागदेन विधिना जितवा मुनीन्द्रो तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि तं तेजसा भवतु ते जयमङ्गलानि ये तापि बुद्ध जयमङ्गल अट्ठगाथा यो वाचको दिने दिने सरते मतन्ति हित्वादनेक विविधानि चुपद्धवानि मोक्षम् सुखम् अधिगमेय नरो सपञ्यो
अब हम लुंगपो सुमेधों के साथ प्रश्नोत्तर का सेशन सुनेंगे।
The first question this evening, could you say something about Advaita Vedanta teachings, which appear to be the same in essence to what you teach in a Buddhist frame of reference?
Well, they point to the same place. Like Buddha Dhamma or Advaita Vedanta as a in Hinduism. So it's all based on mindfulness. So and they use terminologies are slightly different, but the direction is the same thing. Like they talk about non-dualism and in this way of, because the thinking process is dualistic. And so when your teaching is non-dualistic, how do this is what the Buddha wondered, how do you teach non-dualism? I mean, dualism is all about words. If you've got heaven, you've got hell, male, female, good, bad, right, wrong. And so when we're very much caught up in the dualistic conditioning. So this dualistic conditioning is, I'm this physical body, I'm the separate from you, you're the objects of what I see. That's dualistic, isn't it? I see you as an object, looking at you with my eyes, you're the object. Consciousness, in consciousness, the contact with the object is eye consciousness, seeing is, and it's all based on this sense of separation, namarupa, divisiveness of the thinking process. So that's where when you're trying to realize nibbana or ultimate reality, or in Advaita they talk about the Atman, which generally translates it as the self, but not a separate self, but a kind of oneness, or it's consciousness. So these different names, we get confused because we believe in the words that we use, and if somebody uses different language, different words, we get confused. Just like my reflections on God and Dhamma, and these different ways of talking about ultimate reality, whether it's anthropomorphized, personified, whether it's, it's the aim of all religion, really, every religion is to be one with ultimate reality, or in Christian terms, one with God, or in Advaita, to be free from the separate self. In Buddha Dhamma, I very appreciate the skillful means that are available, because we have, these, something like the Four Noble Truths. We have the Four Noble Truths. We have Satipatthana, Four Foundations of Mindfulness. We've got, direct pointing teachings, ways of reflecting that I found incredibly skillful. From the cultural background I'm from, this dualistic way of thinking and interpreting life is culturally conditioned. It's ingrained in you from birth. When your mother and father start talking to you, and it's always with these assumptions of a material world is our reality. Materialism is the real world. And then in Christianity, you've got God created the universe, the world in 6 days. So, that doesn't really compute, literally with science. But this idea of God creating, Creator God, is, still making God into somebody that does something, creates things as a person, as some kind of anthropomorphic entity. This is all dualistic thinking, and we can't help it, because that's what thinking does. When in Paticca Samuppada, you start with avijja, paccaya, sankhara. So, this basic ignorance of Dhamma, of ultimate reality, or of the Four Noble Truths, is avijja, ignorance of reality, affects, all the sankharas. So, avijja bhajya sankhara, sankhara bhajya vijnana. So the sankharas that we attach to, then they're in consciousness, and then consciousness divides into nama rupa, name and form, which even gets more complicated into the six senses, salayatana, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. And it's getting more complicated from nama rupa, which is 2 categories, then salayatana is 6, plus the vedana. So then, the 6 senses operate in each with their sense object, which creates feeling, because senses are sensitive. That's why they're called senses. So this sensitive realm, we see it all in such terms of complicated, convoluted thinking patterns. We try to analyze it, figure it out, and whether it's on the macrocosmic universal, through thinking outwardly towards the macrocosm, vast expanses and universal systems that we can't even visualize or imagine, or microcosm, it gets minute and microscopic. So these are sizes, isn't it? Macrocosm is the opposite of microcosm. These are dualistic concepts that we tend to grasp as ultimate reality. So when we do that, then that's the cause of suffering. So you have, as the senses contact their objects, that's phassa or contact, vedana involved, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, which creates desire. So like in paticca samuppada, dependent origination, you kind of get this sense of how just this basic illusion of a separate self is avijja. I'm alone in this universe, me, this physical being sitting here, and the rest of the universe is an object to me. The sun, moon, stars, everything becomes separate, because that's what the complicated sensual realm is like. It's incredibly complicated, convoluted, and and it's still an illusion, but we believe in the illusion as reality. So like the non-dualistic approaches like Buddhism or Advaita, they're challenging that. They're, the whole emphasis in, I don't know enough about Advaita, but to speak with any authority, but in Buddha Dhamma, you've got this vipassana investigation of experience here in the present moment. So just the sape sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent, to me is something to really, if you're going to think about it, think about that. Think about, sankharas includes everything: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, heaven, hell, sun, moon, stars, microcosm, macrocosm. Everything is impermanent. Sape sankhara, all conditions. Sape means that every condition, all conditions are impermanent. Well, that's a very useful. It's not a dogma. It's not, this is Buddhist doctrine or dogma. The Buddha wasn't intending any of his teachings to be on a doctrinal level of belief. But in vipassana meditation, we investigate impermanence. We can see it for ourselves, just how impermanence, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, pleasant, painful, neutral, beautiful, ugly, change, everything that we experience through the body, through the senses, just from this position of being in a separate form, we can, from this position that we are experiencing reality here and now. Sape Sankarani Cha is really a great gift the Buddha gave us, because it makes it easy for us. There's no excuses, no kind of exceptions. Are there some conditions that are permanent, or are there, we can start getting, speculative or philosophical about it. If we didn't have this kind of very strong statement, Sape Sankarani Cha, all conditions are impermanent. So then we start investigating that. So just by watching, in this yoniso manasikara, get to the very root of it, get to the origin of suffering. So this is, then we're exploring dualistic conditioning, our thoughts, our emotions, love and hate, like and dislike, relaxed, stress, everything that we experience through the body, through the senses, through the states of mind, has their opposite. Whether it's pleasant, it's going to have its opposite in unpleasant. If it's painful, it has its opposite as painless or pleasant sensation. And so the average unenlightened human being, we believe in this material reality as ultimate reality. What we see, hear, taste, touch, feel, think, experience is all seen in terms of me and mine. Because that's how it seems, the body does seem to be me. And my memories are certainly, they keep telling, the memories are a very strong sense of me and mine. We all have different memories. So we're all very different. We have different forms, different appearances, everything. So there's this dualistic attitude. This dualism is a very strong sense that's developed in modern life through modern science. So this is of all ages. This is one of the most materialistic ages that we're experiencing. Material is our reality. So it's interesting that at this time, these non-dualistic teachings from India suddenly become sources of interest in America or Europe, Australia. Why is that? Because Asian religions, like Hinduism as Advaita or Buddha Dhamma, is non-dual, non-materialistic. So it has this sense of, that's why when we talk about consciousness and awareness, when I keep using this word awareness, what do we, is that Supe Sankara? Is that a Sankara? And at first, following the logic of everything is a Sankara, everything is impermanent, all Sankaras are impermanent, then, from my Western conditioned mind, I thought, mindfulness is certainly impermanent. You're not always mindful. You're heedless a lot. You get lost in your thoughts. You trip on the steps. I remember in Wat Pah Pong, they kind of when in the rainy season, I'd take these long routes on alms collecting Bindabata, and you could take an umbrella. So, and I'm determined to, but you can't take your umbrella when you're on alms route in the village, so you leave your umbrella outside the village. So I remember, one kind of amusing incident where it was, when I left the monastery, it was raining, so I had an umbrella. When I got to the village, the rain had stopped. I put the umbrella by a gate post outside the village, and I was being very mindful, very concentrated, doing all the Vinaya practices of keeping your eyes down, on not looking at the people offering the food, and being mindful of each step. When I was so concentrated, I got through the whole village, Vindabat, got back to the monastery. It was about 3 kilometers. I remembered I forgot the umbrella. And so then I had to walk all the way back. And so, this is mindfulness. And then another time I was staying, this was when I was a layman, I was staying at Wat Boniwait in Bangkok. And one of the Western monks there he was always kind of preaching at me. So he was always saying, you've got to be mindful, and he's using mindfulness. And every time he thought I was not being mindful, he'd say, mindfulness. And so then he took me to a building that had to climb the stairs, and he tripped on the stairs. And I thought myself, mindfulness. I kind of appreciated, felt happiness, kind of Schadenfreude kind of feeling. So, the word mindfulness, what does it really mean in English? Is that you're mindful of, when you're driving your car, when you're crossing the street? And then I kept thinking, you're mindful when you're, in certain times, when, especially like driving, situations where there's danger of some kind. But so much of the time one's lost in just dream states, fantasies, worries, anxieties. Are we mindful then? Well, we're always mindful because it's consciousness. So even if we're not mindful of the, a particular, because our lives are in danger or there's threats to us, we're aware. We're aware of what we're reading a book or thinking or fantasizing. There's awareness with us all the time. And so in right mindfulness, in sati and sampajanya, it's intuitive. You're not seeing mindfulness as mindfulness of objects, because then we make judgments, dualistic judgments. We think this is good, this is bad, this thought is a good thought, and that thought is a bad thought. So we are always caught in this dualistic thinking process, making value judgments according to our conditioning. So when we talk about mindfulness or jit hen jit, aware of being aware, then it's where mindfulness aware of mindfulness. It's not going out towards objects as, and just operating from the thinking mind, the dualistic thinking patterns that we've developed. So then you have this sense of what is, if all conditions are impermanent, sape sankhara anicca, then you have sape dhamma anatta, all Dhamma is not self. And so in this sense, in anatta, there's no personal self. You're not the physical body, you're not these are conditions, these are sankharas changing according to their nature. But that which doesn't change is awareness aware of itself. So in insight practices, it's a kind of dramatic shift from dualistic thinking patterns and materialism to Dhamma, to seeing things, to relating to Dhamma is our true nature. It's deathless, it's perfect. So, in terms of sape sankhara anicca, that's all imperfect, isn't it? It's these conditions, you get born, grow up, get old, and die. Thoughts change. You can't have just happy thoughts that stay, permanently in your mind. They change according to conditions. But that which is aware, that which is deathless, which is non-dual, is consciousness. As terms of experience, you don't have to believe me, or but this is a way of reflecting, changing from the materialistic, dualistic conditioning that we all have to the way of Dhamma, of ultimate reality, of reality itself. So when the real world is a material one, the real material world is, we got all kinds of problems about the material world with planetary, with overpopulation, climate change, on and on like that, meteors coming from outer space, crashing into the earth, or who knows how long this planet's going to be livable. And so our whole relationship is, the real world is planetary life. So we start thinking about moving off to Mars, or, that would be interesting place to live. Have you seen photographs of Mars? And, when you look at the planet Earth, when these astronauts, went to the moon, they took these photos of the Earth. The Earth is quite a beautiful planet, even from a distance. Where Mars is called the red planet. It's just, everything is, they don't even know if there's water on it. So I was thinking about moving to live on Mars when we ruin this planet, then we go on Mars and ruin that one. Is this the purpose of our life? Does this make sense? Is this of any real value to always think in terms of trying to survive, just as a physical body, as a person, separate person in a vast universe? It's frightening. Is that all there is to our life? And ask yourself, like the non-dualism is, using words not as doctrinal positions, not as belief systems. They're all for investigation. So like advice of Vedanta, like Ramana Maharishi, sages like that were very much, using self-inquiry practices, which is what we're doing here. Yoniso manasikara, inquiring into the nature of things, into what am I really? Not just operating from the assumption I am my name, my body, my personality, but this teaching of sabbe sankhara anicca, all conditions are impermanent, then you start questioning, even your name is impermanent, and your body certainly is. This doesn't take close examination to figure this out. But what is aware of impermanence? Can impermanent condition be aware of another impermanent condition? This is the ultimate question. Can your personality be aware of your body? Can your personality conditioned sense of self, is it be aware of itself? Can one condition be aware of itself as a condition? Conditions aren't aware. They're empty, in terms of Dhamma, they're empty phenomena. They are, what they are. They have different qualities and quantities and so forth, but it's the base sankhara, they're empty. They have no soul, no heart, no core to them. When you look at them, they're like soap bubbles. In the scriptures, in the sutras, that's called soap bubbles, or foam on the sea, like waves, currents in the ocean. They exist, but they're impermanent.
Another question is, could you please talk about the Eightfold Path?
The Eightfold Path, the Fourth Noble Truth, and the Fourth Noble Truth, it's 8 folds, it's not 8 steps. So, we tend to think in one, you start with samaditthi, sammasangapo, and each step by step, but they're like, it's the here and now. The Eightfold Path is not really a path. A path has distance to it. But that's the best word they can come up with to bring this into consciousness of samaditthi, right understanding, perfect understanding. When you realize Dhamma, have the insight into Dhamma, into amatta Dhamma, deathless reality, which is awareness, which is consciousness, awareness, aware of awareness, then that's samaditthi, that insight. It's a very strong kind of gut recognition of the path. Samaditthi is the first step on the path, or the first fold. That affects everything else. Sammasangapo, which is right attitude, so from right understanding comes right intention, which is then right speech, right action, right livelihood. So in terms of, in terms of lay people who aren't meditating, you start with sila, samadhi, panya. So it's morality is first, then samadhi, concentration, then wisdom. That's one form that's presented. And so sila is morality, samadhi is concentration, panya is wisdom. But in terms of the Four Noble Truths, the fourth Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, it starts with wisdom. Wisdom, sila, samadhi. So that's quite interesting. Because with wisdom, with samadhi, everything falls into place. It's simultaneous arising. The whole path is really here and now. It's not, starting with one thing and going on to another. It's three folds in the same moment. So through samadhi, we have insight into how to live in the remaining part of our lives within the human form in a society that's very dualistic and deluded. How to live in, it's through wisdom, through samadhi, samasangapo, which is, of course, to affect the kind of moral, the sila of right action, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Which then is right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. But it's like simultaneous arising, 8 folds rather than 8 steps. So, in defining the Fourth Noble Truth, it's the way to live not creating suffering. The way to live one's life with these unsatisfactory conditions of the human body and the conditioning of the mind, the emotions and so forth. We still, after insight, into the path, we still have to live with bodies that have lustful energies and greed, hatred, delusion. They're still part of the vipaka karma, or the power of our past, the way we're programmed and conditioned from birth. But we have this insight, the path of awareness, here and now. And this path is then known not through the intellect. It's not an intellectual understanding of the Eightfold Path. It's an insightful one, like on the heart level, on intuitive level. It's not just an abstract ideal path anymore. It's always about here and now.
Someone's asking, is it possible to attain complete liberation from suffering as a layperson in this lifetime?
I don't really know because I'm a monk. One time in England, one of the nuns asked me, can women get enlightened? And I said, you have to tell me because I'm not a woman. But the teaching is not about monks or lay people or men or male or female. It's Dhamma. It's what we all are. Enlightenment isn't, is not relegated to a special group. It's a potential available to all of us, every human being. Except, when you think of you've got, the way I've been encouraging you is to trust your awareness. I haven't asked you all to become monks and nuns, but I encourage you to trust the awareness. Because you can ordain as a monk or a nun and still be totally unaware of you. It's how you use your life, it's up to you. It's the way you are, the kind of character you have, the kind of karma you've made with your life. It's up, we have this ability to use the way we are to realize Dhamma. You can't, I can't act like Ajahn Chah or Luang Pu Man. I can't, when I became, after 8 pansas at Wat Pa Pong, I went to become the head monk of Wat Pa Nanachat. And I'd never been in such a position, I wasn't even, an Ajahn yet, just 8 pansas. And you're not called Ajahn until you have 10 pansas. The last thing I wanted to do was to be head of a monastery of Western monks. Because you've got to teach them everything, Thai language and Thai customs and, everything. And they come from different countries. And I was very much into silent meditation. Always trying to go off by myself to some remote place. I really enjoyed sitting practice, developing samadhi and things like that. But because I had made an adhitthana, a determination, that I began to feel such gratitude to Ajahn Chah, this Gatanyu Gataveti towards Luang Por Chah, that I thought, I'll do whatever he asks me to do, even if I don't want to do it. And if he asks me to go and start a monastery, I'll do it, because of this determination I made. So the first few months were, we had about 10 monks of different nationalities, and my role model was Ajahn Chah, and I spent a pansa with Luang Por Jan, who was Ajahn Chah's, one of his senior disciples. So they were my role models for Jawawat, for abbot, head monk kind of role models. So I was trying to act like Ajahn Chah. And the monks would have none of it. And that's all I knew how to do, because I didn't have any experience, in my own right as being a head of a monastery or a leader or even a teacher. So then your memory goes to, well, Luang Por Chah did it like this, said things like this, so you must be the same, try to do it exactly like Luang Por Chah. Well, it wasn't working, and I was totally miserable. And so, one afternoon, I walked up, it's about 4 or 5 kilometers from Nanachat to Wat Pa Pong. I went by myself to see Ajahn Chah, and he was sitting under his kuti, and he saw that I was in quite a miserable state. So he started laughing at me. And he said, you thought, didn't you, Sumedho, that when you're Jawawat, when you're abbot of monastery, you get a triangular pillow to lean on and give orders. And because that's one of the forms, in those days of Jawawat, the head monk, having these triangular pillows. And the rest of us didn't have any. It was a status symbol at that time. And I had a triangular pillow in Nanachat. But then, because I began to ask myself, what is it that about Luang Por Chah that I find so compelling? What is it I really love or like about Ajahn Chah? Is it because he's so strict with the Vinaya? Is it because he's got all these kind of external conditions, a very strict monastery, and everything was done in a certain way, and you had to follow, and imitate every movement, every situation. Then I began to realize that I knew monks that were like that I didn't particularly want to live with. And so I figured out it's because Ajahn Chah is being himself. He's not trying to emulate Luang Pu Man or anybody else. He's natural. He has a great sense of humor. He's very charismatic, has a personality, but he's himself. He's not using charm for any selfish reason. He's charming because that's the way he is. And so I had this insight that I had to trust myself, be the way. I couldn't be another Ajahn Chah or another Ajahn Jan. You can't be, you're phony, you're not real when you're trying to act like somebody else. So that's why I encourage you, that we learn from the way we are. No matter what you think of yourself, if you think of yourself as not being good enough, or you think yourself as being good enough, or you think you don't have, like with Thai people, they often say they don't have the barami, the accumulated virtues, and so forth. But that's not about the path, about how many virtues you've accumulated. Is so direct to be the very thought that I don't have enough barami to practice, or I'm only a lay person, or I'm a woman, I can't really ordain as a monk, and all these excuses are coming from this dualistic thinking process. It's identity with all the limitations of the sankharas that you identify as yourself. They're all limited, so you think, so you can't really trust and believe in the sankharas as yourself. So if you believe you can't become enlightened as a lay person, that's belief, isn't it? That's what it really is. At this moment, any of you who think you can't, as a lay man or lay woman, that's a creation with words. And be aware of that. It's not that it's wrong to think that, but that's a creation you make out of this dualistic thinking process, your identity with sankharas. So the direct approach is awareness of thoughts. It's not judging them as right or wrong, good or bad, but they are what they are. So if I am a layman thinking I can't really become enlightened, I have to wait for the next lifetime, that's thinking. So trust your awareness. The thinking is, whatever it is sankhara, it's impermanent and not so. So it's as direct as that, learning to no longer grasp the illusions of a separate self, but it's not that you're not going to have any more illusions, but your awareness is not an illusion. Your awareness is the knowing. And this reference to sape sankhara, all conditions are impermanent, is not a doctrinal doctrine or something you project onto reality. It's just the way you have insight. What is permanent, what is impermanent in terms of experience here and now. So if you have to be ordained as a monk to become enlightened, that's another creation. The monastic order was, it's a tradition, and the whole point of monastic discipline is mindfulness. So it's, and it's not a dualistic tradition. It's non-dual. But we can make it into dualistic traditions, because traditions themselves are some form of dualism. But it's not to bind yourself to a tradition or to Vinaya rules to create a separate sense of a self, but to use the tradition, the teachings of the Buddha, the Vinaya discipline for awareness. So that's the challenge of lay people using, here in Thailand, for example, you're living in a society that's 95% Buddhist, so it's quite, you're surrounded by temples and monasteries, monks, mechis, nuns, and so forth. So this is, you've got the constant reminders just visually, but then because Buddhism is a tradition so integrated into the culture, sometimes we don't quite understand it. We just see it as a part of Thai culture rather than as a tool for liberation. And that's what the Buddha intended it to be, as something to use. And then you have to, when you judge yourself as a person, you tend to see all kinds of flaws, like you're afraid of ghosts, or you're shy, or you're conceited, or you think you're better than others, or you think you're not as good. You feel you have certain weaknesses and faults. You get angry too easily, too much lust. You get confused and full of doubt. You don't know who you are. These are all conditions you can use for awareness. None of them are obstacles if you trust in your awareness.
And the last question today. If there was one phrase or sentence we could take away from this retreat to use as a reminder in daily life, what would you recommend we use?
Trust your awareness. And I mean, this is, the whole emphasis on this retreat is kind of encouraging this, because your dualistic thinking process is a critical function. That's what it does. You can't trust, yourself if you see yourself always in dualistic terms. There's so many things, in our personality, our emotional habits, and that go all over the place. You can't trust. And if you see yourself and believe yourself to be the five khandhas, and so like the Vipassana teachings are about trusting awareness, to be aware of impermanence, not trying to get rid of impermanence or see, judge it with the thinking mind. It's just the nature of phenomena. All conditions are impermanent. And by trusting your awareness of that, just like I was saying before about can lay people become enlightened, trust your awareness of the belief that you think you're a lay person is a belief. That's a position you create that thought. I'm only a lay woman or a lay man. And being aware of that is thinking. It's impermanent. The thinking is impermanent. So you begin to dissolve these identities that always bind you to limited forms, unsatisfactory conditions.
सभी प्रश्नों का बिल्कुल सारांश में ही उत्तर समरी हिंदी अनुवाद करते हैं, क्यों समय ज़्यादा नहीं है। पहला प्रश्न था रूमपुर से कि आपकी टीचिंग अद्वैत वेदांत से काफ़ी मिलती है, तो उन दोनों में कुछ फ़र्क है या एक ही बात है? तो उन्होंने कहा कि दोनों ही एक अद्वैत की टीचिंग है, डुअलिटी की उसमें नहीं मानी जाती। जो भगवान ने भी जब एनलाइटनमेंट पाथ प्राप्त की होगी, उसके बाद उनको लगा होगा कि ये नॉन डुअलिज्म की बातें कैसे सिखाई जाएं, क्योंकि जो हमारी सोच है वो तो सारी डुअलिस्टिक ही होती है। तो इसलिए उनकी टर्मिनोलॉजी अलग थी, अद्वैत की टर्मिनोलॉजी अलग है, तो उस टर्मिनोलॉजी के चक्कर में कन्फ्यूजन हो जाता है। लेकिन मैं इतना कह सकता हूँ कि जो भगवान बुद्ध की टीचिंग है उसमें बड़े स्किलफुल टूल्स दिए गए हैं ताकि हम इस चर्चा के माध्यम से, शब्दों के माध्यम से, सोचने के माध्यम से उस डायरेक्शन में बढ़ सकें। जैसे 4 आर्य सत्य हैं, सतीपट्ठान है, पतिच्च समुत्पाद हैं, ये एक सोचने का रिफ्लेक्शन के तरीके हैं जिससे कि हम ड्यूअलिस्टिक कंडीशन जो है, जो हमारी द्वैतवाद की कंडीशनिंग है, क्योंकि हमको लगता है मैं अलग हूँ, ये अलग है, वो अलग है, संसार अलग है, हम अलग हैं। तो ये जो द्वैत लगता है इसको इतना ज़्यादा असर है हम पे, उससे निकलने के लिए भगवान ने बड़े अच्छे तरीके दिए हैं। अगर हम उनको ठीक से पालन करेंगे समझ के और योनिसो मनसिकारा के हिसाब से बिल्कुल उसके जो दुख है उसके मूल में जाएंगे, उसके रूट में जाएंगे, तो हमें मालूम पड़ता है कि सारे दुख का कारण ही ये डुअलिस्टिक टेंडेंसी है, क्योंकि उसी को अविद्या कहते हैं और उस अविद्या के कारण ही दुख बढ़ता रहता है, जैसे पतिच्च समुत्पाद में समझाया गया है। और जो सब्बे संखारा अनिच्छा वाली बात है उस पर उन्होंने बहुत ध्यान दिलाया हमारा कि सब्बे का मतलब सब कुछ है, कोई भी चीज़ ऐसी छूटी नहीं है। तो जो खंड हों सारे, हमारे विचार हों, हमारे सोचने के तरीके हों, लेकिन जो अवेयरनेस है, जो हमारी जानने की क्षमता है, वो उसमें नहीं आती है, क्योंकि वो हमेशा उपलब्ध रहती है। हम कह सकते हैं कि जो माइंडफुलनेस है, जिस सेंस में हम कॉमनली डिस्क्राइब करते हैं कि भाई हम कभी सजग रहते हैं, कभी नहीं रहते, तो उस सेंस में कह सकते हैं। लेकिन उस सजगता जब खो भी जाती है तब भी अवेयरनेस रहती है। ऐसा नहीं है कि हम सब कुछ मालूम ही नहीं हमें क्या हो रहा है। हमें मालूम होता है कि हमारा मन इधर चला गया, इधर चला गया, करना ये था, कर ये रहे, लेकिन अवेयरनेस हमेशा बनी रहती है। तो इसलिए अवेयरनेस संखार नहीं है। इसलिए वो बार बार कहते हैं कि हमें अवेयरनेस के ऊपर ज़्यादा ध्यान देना चाहिए, अपनी पर्सनालिटी पे, कंडीशनिंग पे ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। और ये सब एक और तरीके से समझाया उन्होंने कि कोई भी जो अनित्य चीज़ है वो अनित्य को पहचान नहीं सकती। जो बदलने वाली चीज़ है उसको जानने के लिए कोई ऐसी चीज़ होनी चाहिए जो ना बदल रही है। दूसरा प्रश्न था कि यार अष्टांगिक मार्ग के बारे में बताएं। तो उन्होंने कहा, संक्षेप में कहा कि वो चौथा आर्य सत्य है। वैसे हम इसको मार्ग कहते हैं, लेकिन वो कोई मार्ग नहीं है, क्योंकि हमें कहीं जाना नहीं है। हमको तो सिर्फ एक समझना है कि सत्य क्या है। इसलिए जब जो साधक हैं उनके लिए जब मार्ग की डिस्क्रिप्शन आता है तो सम्मा दिट्ठी से शुरू होता है। और सम्मा दिट्ठी से अगर हम देखें, अगर वो समझ में आ जाए तो बाकी सारे संकल्प हमारे शुद्ध हो जाएंगे, हमारे वाणी शुद्ध हो जाएगी, कर्म शुद्ध हो जाएंगे, आजीविका शुद्ध हो जाएगी, हमारा एफर्ट शुद्ध हो जाएगा, मेहनत शुद्ध हो जाएगी, सती शुद्ध हो जाएगी, समाधि शुद्ध हो जाएगी। तो दृष्टि के सम्यक होने से सारी चीज़ें समझ में हो जाती हैं। जो शील समाधि पन्या के हिसाब से समझाया जाता है, ताकि जो नए लोग आ रहे हैं जिन्होंने साधना नहीं की है उनको समझ में आए कि हाँ, पहले शील का पालन करना चाहिए, फिर समाधि बढ़ानी चाहिए, फिर प्रज्ञा बढ़ानी चाहिए। तीसरा प्रश्न था कि क्या जो गृहस्थ लोग हैं वो पूरी तरह मुक्त हो सकते हैं। तो उन्होंने कहा ये शिक्षा जो है गृहस्थ या भिक्षु पर पुरुष या स्त्री इस तरह के लिए नहीं है। जो एनलाइटनमेंट है सबके लिए उपलब्ध है। हम जो है अपनी समझ से, अपनी प्रज्ञा से ये जाने कि जो अवेयरनेस है वो विश्वास के योग्य चीज़ है, क्योंकि वो हमेशा बनी रहती है। और अपनी अवेयरनेस के आधार पे हम देख सकते हैं कि कोई भी चीज़ हम सोचते हैं ये हो सकता है या नहीं हो सकता, वो एक सोच है केवल, वो एक थिंकिंग है जो कि कंडीशनड है। और कंडीशन चीज़ें तो अनित्य होती हैं, तो उन पे हमको महत्व नहीं देना चाहिए। एक बात और उन्होंने कही कि हमें जो मोनास्टिक ऑर्डर है उसमें भी अगर मॉन्क भी बन जाए तो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि वो हमेशा सजग रहेगा, क्योंकि सारी मॉन्क बनने का भी उद्देश्य यही होता है कि हम सजग रहें। तो जो भी विचार आते हैं इस तरह के, जो भी शंकाएं आती हैं, उसको एक संखार के रूप में देख के उसको त्याग दें, उसको निरोध होने दें और अवेयरनेस पे विश्वास रखेंगे, क्योंकि अवेयरनेस सत्य है और वो उस पर वो सभ्य संखार अनिच्छा नहीं रखता। इसलिए उसके आधार पे हम जीवन जिएंगे तो कोई इस तरह के प्रश्न नहीं उठेंगे और साधना जित कर पाएंगे। चौथा था कि एक वाक्य में आप समझा दीजिए कि सारे, क्योंकि रिट्रीट का वीडियोस हैं, ऑडियोज़ हैं, कि इस रिट्रीट से हम क्या लेके जाएं अपने लिए जो हम हमेशा याद रखें। तो उन्होंने फिर वही बात दोहराई कि जो अवेयरनेस है उस पर विश्वास करो, सती संपजन्य पर विश्वास करो। और वही, और जो ये डुअलिस्टिक सोचना है, मैं अलग हूँ ये अलग है, और जो हम अपने को 5 खंडों में मानते हैं उसको छोड़ दीजिए। और जो सत्य है अपना जो वास्तविक सत्य है वो अवेयरनेस है, प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस है, उसको मानने। तो ये बिल्कुल संक्षेप में प्रश्न के उत्तर थे। तो आज हमने पुण्यानुसति का अभ्यास करने का विचार बनाया था, तो संक्षेप में करते हैं। पुण्यानुसति भी एक हमारे प्रोटेक्टिव परित्ता मेडिटेशन कही जाती है, जो हमको सुरक्षा प्रदान करती है। 2 उसके भाग जैसे बता रहे चर्चा हो चुकी। सामान्यतः शिरानुसति, छागानुसति, और आज मैं दलाई लामा के एक टॉक सुन रहा था, उसमें लिविंग एंड डाइंग के बारे में। तो उन्होंने कहा था कि जो वो बता रहे थे कि जो भी हम मृत्यु के लिए सोचते हैं हम सजग रहें। अगर हमने सारे जीवन पुण्य किए हैं तो उनको याद कर लें, चाहे आप भगवान में विश्वास करते हो नहीं करते हो, बुद्धिस्ट हो कि नहीं हो, बेशक प्योर नास्तिक भी हो, तो भी अगर हमने पुण्य किए हैं उनको याद करें मरने मृत्यु के समय, तो बहुत लाभ होता है, चित्त प्रसन्न होता है। तो फिर जो जो भी होगा उसका कंक्लूजन वो अच्छा ही होगा। तो पुण्यानुसति अत्यंत लाभकारी है हम सबके लिए, ताकि चित्त प्रसन्न रहे। और चित्त प्रसन्न होता है तो तभी समाधि का अभ्यास हो पाता है, तभी हम यथाभूत ज्ञान दर्शन कर पाएंगे, निब्बिदता जागेगी, तभी आगे मुक्ति की ओर बढ़ पाएंगे। तो इसलिए चित्त को प्रसन्न रखना, चित्त को अपलिफ्टेड रखना बहुत आवश्यक है, ख़ासतौर पे जब चारों तरफ माहौल बहुत कष्टदायी हो, दुखदायी हो, चारों तरफ नेगेटिविटी हो। तो इसलिए पुण्यानुस्मृति काफ़ी लाभदायक है। तो आए हम सब पहले अपने शीलों को याद करके देखें, इतने वर्षों से हम शीलों का पालन कर रहे हैं और उनके त्रिविध पालन करते हैं। त्रिविध अर्थात खुद शील नहीं तोड़ते, कोई शील तोड़ता है तो उसका अनुमोदन नहीं करते और किसी को शील तोड़ने के लिए प्रेरित नहीं करते। तो इस तरह से पांचों शीलों को त्रिविध करके 15 प्रकार से हम करते हैं। तो हम इसका अवलोकन अपने मन में कर सकते हैं। कहीं कुछ कमज़ोरी नज़र आए तो संकल्प कर सकते हैं कि आगे से और पुष्ट करेंगे शीलों को। तो पहले शीलानुसति करते हैं थोड़े समय। पहला शील प्राणियों की हत्या से संबंधित, प्राणियों की हत्या से विरमण। दूसरा, जो चीज़ हमारी नहीं है उसको नहीं लेंगे। तीसरा, व्यभिचार नहीं करेंगे। चौथा, झूठ बोल के, कड़वी बात बोल के, निंदा की बात बोलेंगे नहीं, समय व्यर्थ नहीं गंवाएंगे। और पांचवा, नशा नहीं करेंगे, ऐसी स्थान पे नहीं जाएंगे जहाँ पे कि प्रमाद हो। तो एक एक करके हम विश्लेषण कर सकते हैं, पुनरावलोकन कर सकते हैं अपने जीवन का। और जिस जिस हद तक हम इसको कर पाए उस हद तक मन में प्रसन्नता जागे। शील में इंटेंशन का मतलब, शील का किसी भी कर्म करने का मतलब होता है उसका इंटेंशन हो। अनइंटेंशनली कुछ हो जाए, शील कोई टूट जाए तो वो शील टूटना नहीं माना जाता, कि वो सजगता की कमी माना जाता है। हम चल रहे हैं पार्क में और कोई चींटी पाँव के नीचे आ गई तो शील टूटना नहीं माना जाता, हाथियों में जाने वाली बात हो जाएगी। और फिर त्यागानुसति, जो भी हमने त्याग किए हैं, जो हमने दान दिया है अपने समय का, अपने मेहनत का, अपने धन का, किसी भी वस्तु को व्यक्ति को जो जिसकी आवश्यकता हो, और ख़ास तौर पे धर्म के दान में सहायता की हो, भिक्षुओं को दान दिया हो, अरहंत भिक्षुओं को दान दिया हो, तो उसको मन में लाके मन में मोद जगा सकते हैं, प्रसन्नता जगाते हैं। और ये सब याद करते समय मन में अहंकार नहीं, मन में कृतज्ञता जागनी चाहिए उनके प्रति, उन सब के प्रति, उन सब परिस्थितियों के प्रति जिनके कारण हम सभी कर पाए, खास तौर पे दान दे पाए। तभी संभव होता है जब हमारी परिस्थिति ऐसी हो। न जाने कितने जाने अनजाने लोगों का सहयोग रहा होगा, तभी हम ऐसा कर पाए। तो जागानुसति का याद करते हुए कृतज्ञता का भाव भी जागे, और फिर जब अपने पुण्य को याद कर रहे हैं तो शरीर में भी मोद जागता है, प्रसन्नता जागती है। तो उस प्रसन्नता से शरीर को व्याप्त करके शांति से शरीर को व्याप्त करके फिर हम इन पुण्यों को समर्पित करते हैं सबके लिए, सबकी भलाई के लिए, सबके मंगल के लिए। तो थोड़ी देर शरीर में इस मुदिता को, इस प्रसन्नता को देखते हैं, उसके भाव को, शरीर पे क्या असर होता है, कैसी वेदना शरीर पे हो रही है, उनका अवलोकन करते हैं सारे शरीर का। अब इन तरंगों को चारों दिशाओं में व्याप्त करके ये पुण्य समर्पित करने की संकल्प की गाथा पढ़ते हैं। ये लो, आप पढ़ दो हिंदी में। लाइट जलाओ।
आए हम
धीरे 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 धीरे।
पुण्य समर्पित करने के संकल्प की गाथा का पाठ करें। मेरे इन पुण्यों से मेरे गुणवान उपाध्याय, मेरे उपकारी आचार्य, माता पिता एवं संबंधी, सूर्य चंद्रमा
थोड़ा रुक जाओ एक सेंट लाइन के बाद, ताकि विचार कर
एवं
सकें।
गुणवान नर तथा राजा, ब्रह्मा, मार, इंद्र तथा लोकपाल देवता, यम, सभी मनुष्य चाहे मित्र हो, वैरी हो अथवा तटस्थ, सभी प्राणी मेरे किए गए पुण्यों से सुखी हों। वे इन्हें त्रिविध सुख दें तथा शीघ्र अमृत पद को प्राप्त करें। इन पुण्य कर्मों एवं इस समर्पण से तृष्णा एवं आसक्ति का शीघ्र भेदन सुलभ हो और जब तक निर्वाण का साक्षात्कार हो मन की अहितकर अवस्थाओं का हर पुनर्जन्म में नाश हो। सती एवं प्रज्ञा, तप एवं वीर्य, पुरुषार्थ से युक्त मेरे सरल चित्त में मार को वीर्य कमजोर करने का अवसर न मिले। बुद्ध मेरे उत्तम नाथ हैं, धम्म मेरा श्रेष्ठ नाथ है। प्रत्येक बुद्ध मेरे नाथ हैं तथा संघ मेरा श्रेष्ठ नाथ है। इन सब के उत्तम प्रभाव से मार की शक्तियों को कोई अवसर न मिले।
आज की विषम परिस्थितियों में ये पुण्य समर्पण खास तौर पे उन सभी के प्रति जो इस महामारी में सेवा कार्यों में लगे हुए हैं, अपनी सुरक्षा की चिंता किए बगैर, सभी डॉक्टर, मेडिकल स्टाफ, सिक्योरिटी स्टाफ, पुलिस वाले, पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस, दुकानदार, ऑनलाइन ट्रेडिंग वाले लोग जो सामान घरों तक पहुंचा रहे हैं, उन सब के प्रति आभार। और ये हम सब संकल्प करें कि वो हमारे इन पुण्यों में साझेदार बने ताकि वो सुरक्षित रहें, प्रसन्न रहें, स्वस्थ रहें। सर्वमंगलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमंगलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमंगलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वसंघानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु मे। सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि। स्वागतो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि।